The moment my parents returned without my 6-year-old son, their faces calm as they casually mentioned he was finding his way home, through miles of wilderness, something primal erupted inside me, a fury born from my own childhood traumas at their hands. I'd spent years building walls between their twisted version of strength and the gentle boy I'd raised, only for my ex-husband's careless decision to shatter that protection in an afternoon. As I raced into those familiar, haunted woods, I wasn't just searching for Theo. I was hunting for the final confrontation with my parents' legacy of abuse, determined that, unlike me, my son would never have to learn that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who claim to love you. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. I've always been an overprotective mother. At least that's what Zane used to say before we split up. But when you've seen the dark side of parenting, when you've lived through it, you don't take chances with your own child. My son Theo just turned 6 last month. He's the kind of kid who apologizes to stuffed animals when he accidentally knocks them over. His heart is so gentle, so unlike the hardened shell I had to grow around mine. He loves dinosaur books and drawing pictures of magical forests, though he's never been in a real one. Not if I could help it. We live in a small apartment in the city. Nothing fancy, but it's warm in the winter and cool in the summer. There are locks on every window, and I check them twice before bed each night. Theo has nightlights in his room, the hallway, and the bathroom. He never has to fumble in the dark, never has to feel that spike of fear when shadows move unexpectedly. "Mom, can we have pancakes?" Theo asked this morning, his cowlick sticking straight up as he rubbed sleep from his eyes. "Of course, buddy." I ruffled his hair, savoring the simple joy of being able to say yes to such an easy request. As I mixed the batter, my mind drifted back. It does that sometimes, no matter how hard I try to stay present. I remembered being 9 years old, cold and alone in the woods behind our property. My father, Walter, had dropped me off at sunrise with nothing but a compass and a canteen. "You'll find your way back when you're hungry enough," he'd said, his breath visible in the morning chill. "Stop crying. Tears are a waste of water." I didn't make it home until nightfall. When I finally stumbled through the back door, my mother, Nadine, barely looked up from her canning. "Well, look who decided to join us for dinner," she'd said, as if I'd just been out playing, not lost and terrified for 12 hours. They called it preparation, training, building character. They had a bunker in the basement filled with canned goods and ammunition. My childhood was a series of drills and tests, punctuated by punishments when I showed weakness, which, according to them, was often. "Mom, the pancakes are bubbling." Theo's voice pulled me back. I flipped the pancakes and smiled at him, determined that his childhood memories would be filled with warmth and security, not fear and abandonment. My phone rang as we were finishing breakfast.
"Zane."
I almost didn't answer. Our conversations rarely went well these days, but something made me pick up. "He's with your parents. They just took him for the day." "It's fine," he said, his voice casual, as if he were telling me Theo was at a friend's house or the movies. The room tilted. My hand gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went white. "You what?" I couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 7 years. Zane knew this.
He knew why.
They stopped by the house. Said they wanted to take him fishing at some lake. Seemed harmless enough. Harmless? Harmless. My voice rose, and I turned away so Theo wouldn't see my face. "I told you never to let them near him. Ever. They're his grandparents, Delaney."
"He'll be fine."
"Stop being so paranoid. They said they'd have him back by dinner." "Which lake?" I demanded, already grabbing my keys. "Zane, which lake?" "Silverwood, I think. The one with the camping grounds on the north." I hung up. I knew exactly where they'd taken him. It wasn't Silverwood. It was Blackwater Lake, 2 hours north, where my father had taken me for my first survival weekend when I was 8. Where my brother Tom had run away, never to return home again. The drive was a blur. I called 911 from the car, but they didn't understand the urgency. "Ma'am, if the child is with his grandparents, they're abusers. They've taken my son without permission. I have sole legal custody. I spoke as clearly as I could through the panic. Please send someone to Blackwater Lake.
Now.
I broke every speed limit. My hands shook on the steering wheel as memories flooded back, sleeping in a bunker with no light, being forbidden to cry, watching my father skin rabbits while telling me I might need to do the same someday. The gravel parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived, just a faded pickup truck I recognized as my father's and a couple of other cars belonging to fishermen. I slammed my car into park and ran toward the shore, scanning desperately for any sign of Theo. And then I saw them, my parents, sitting calmly on a blanket near the water's edge, a picnic basket between them. My mother was knitting. My father was reading a book. No Theo. They looked older, but exactly the same. My father's beard was now completely gray. My mother's once auburn hair faded to a dull brown. They looked up as I approached, neither surprised nor concerned. "Where is he?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "Where's Theo?" My father smiled. That same smile he'd give me when he was testing me. "Out there. In the trees. He needs this. He's 6 years old." I screamed, looking frantically at the dense forest that surrounded the lake. "He's a little boy." My mother clicked her knitting needles together. "He won't learn resilience if you keep rescuing him, Delaney. You never did." I didn't waste another second arguing. I pulled out my phone and called 911 again. "My parents abandoned my son in the forest. He's 6. He has no water. Start a search now. I'm at Blackwater Lake." My voice was deadly calm now. The kind of calm that comes when panic transforms into pure determination. As I waited for help to arrive, I stared at the two people who had brought me into this world, but never protected me from it. Their expressions were placid, unbothered. They genuinely believed they were doing Theo a favor. "He'll find his way home," my father said. "Or he won't. That's the test." I turned away from them, toward the vast expanse of trees that had swallowed my little boy, and began to shout his name. The first police cruiser arrived 40 minutes later, followed by 2 park rangers in their olive green truck. Too slow. Every minute that passed was another minute Theo was alone in those woods, scared, confused, maybe hurt. "Ma'am, we need you to explain the situation," the taller officer said, notepad in hand. Before I could speak, my father stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of innocence. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding. The boy just went exploring. That's not a crime, is it?" My mother appeared at his side, a plastic container in her hands. "Would anyone like a cookie?" Their oatmeal raisin, my grandson's favorite. The casual way they were acting made my blood boil. As if this were a simple family, outing gone slightly awry. As if they hadn't deliberately put a child in danger. "They took my son without my permission and left him alone in the forest," I said through clenched teeth. "I want them arrested for child endangerment and kidnapping." The officers exchanged glances. "We'll take statements from everyone, but right now let's focus on finding the boy."
Theo, got that?
"His name is Theo." While one officer questioned my parents, the park rangers began coordinating a search. They asked for a description, a photo. I showed them the picture on my phone. Theo on his birthday, gap-toothed smile, dinosaur t-shirt, eyes bright with excitement over his cake. "Has he ever been camping before? Does he know anything about survival?" one ranger asked. I shook my head. "He's never even been hiking." My voice caught. "He's afraid of the dark." The search team wanted me to stay at the base camp they were setting up, in case Theo found his way back. "You're too emotional right now," the officer said kindly. "Let the professionals handle this." But I wasn't about to sit and wait. Not when I knew these woods. Not when I knew what it felt like to be abandoned in them. As soon as they were distracted, I slipped away, following a trail I remembered from my childhood. The smell of pine and damp earth brought back memories I'd spent years trying to forget. I was 10, huddled in a small tent my father had made me pitch myself. No flashlight allowed. The darkness was absolute. Something rustled outside, probably just a raccoon, but in my mind it was a bear, a wolf, a monster. I screamed for hours. No one came. It's called discipline, my father said the next morning as I stumbled back to the cabin, exhausted and tear-stained. You think the world's going to come running every time you're scared? Toughen up. I pushed the memory away. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about Theo, and I would not let history repeat itself. I heard the crunch of gravel behind me and turned to see Zane's car pulling into the lot. He sprinted toward me, his face pale. Did they find him? He asked, breathless. The rage I'd been suppressing erupted. You did this, I hissed, shoving him hard in the chest. You gave my son to those people. I didn't think they'd do anything crazy, he stammered. They seemed so normal. They talked about fishing and hot dogs and… You don't get to think anymore. I cut him off. You don't get to make decisions about Theo. Ever again. I turned away from him and continued down the path, ignoring his calls to come back, to let the search team do their job. He didn't understand. The forest was vast and unfamiliar to the authorities, but I knew it like the back of my hand. Every hill, every stream, every clearing where my father might have left a 6-year-old boy to toughen up. The sun was beginning its slow descent when I found the first sign of Theo, a small white sock near the creek that ran through the eastern part of the woods. It was wet and muddy, but couldn't have been there long. My heart raced. He'd been here.
Theo?
I called, my voice echoing through the trees. Theo, it's Mom. I'm here. Only silence answered. You shouldn't be out here alone, a deep voice said behind me. I whirled around to see a park ranger I hadn't met before. He was older than the others, with weathered skin and kind eyes. I found his sock, I said, holding it up like evidence. He was here. The ranger nodded.
I'm Joel.
I'm guessing you're their daughter, huh? He gestured vaguely back toward the lake, where my parents were. I remember them from years back. They used to bring groups out here. Survival training, they called it. They scared the hell out of people. I stared at him, surprised. You knew them? Knew of them. Your dad once told a buddy of mine that fear was the best teacher. Joel shook his head. Never sat right with me. We continued along the creek together, following what might have been a trail. Fresh breaks in small branches. A footprint here and there in the soft mud. Was this spontaneous? Joel asked after a while. Did they just take him on a whim? I paused, considering. No, I said slowly. Zane, my ex, said they showed up at his house. They knew he had Theo this weekend, and they knew exactly where to take him. So they planned it, Joel said grimly. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the cooling evening air. If they'd planned this, what else had they prepared? Had they brought supplies for Theo, or truly left him with nothing? We made our way back to the base camp, so I could share what we'd found. The search teams had expanded, with more rangers and local volunteers joining the effort. Floodlights were being set up as darkness approached. My parents sat in the back of a police car, but they hadn't been formally arrested. My father caught my eye and actually smiled. Not a warm smile, a challenging one. I stormed over to the car. An officer moved to stop me, but I pushed past him. Where exactly did you leave him? I demanded, pressing my hands against the car window. Tell me now. My father leaned forward. He's where he needs to be, Delaney. This is for his own good. He's 6 years old. I was 5 the first time, he replied calmly. You were 8. Your brother was 7. It's a family tradition. A tradition of child abuse. I spat. He just shrugged. The world is harsh. Better to learn that in a controlled environment than be blindsided later. I noticed something then, a small backpack in the rear seat of the car. Child-sized. Blue, with dinosaur patches.
Theo.
You brought a pack for him, I said, the realization dawning. You planned this. What's in it? What did you give him? My father's eyes gleamed. He's either worthy or he's not. I lunged for the car door, but the officer pulled me back. Ma'am, this isn't helping. Check the backpack, I insisted. There might be clues about where they left him. The officer nodded and spoke into his radio. Minutes later, the backpack was brought to the command tent and emptied onto a table. A small water bottle, a compass, a whistle, a granola bar, and a crude hand-drawn map that made my stomach turn. It showed Blackwater Lake and 3x marks in the surrounding forest. One was circled. "He's at one of these locations," I said, pointing. "But which one?" The search grid narrowed to the 3 marked locations on my father's map. Teams were dispatched to each, but I knew which one Theo would be at, the circled X. It was the farthest point, near a rock formation that resembled a turtle's shell. My father had taken me there once, left me for hours while he watched from a distance. "I'm going to the Turtle Rocks," I told Joel, who had stayed by my side throughout the evening. "I'll come with you," he said without hesitation. We set off at a brisk pace, flashlights cutting through the growing darkness. The forest was alive with night sounds, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, the whisper of wind through the pines. Sounds that would terrify a little boy who slept with nightlights. "Do you think he's still okay?" I asked Joel, voicing the fear I'd been fighting since I first learned Theo was missing. "Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for," Joel replied. "And from what you've told me, he's a smart boy." We passed a broken tree I remembered from my childhood, split down the middle by lightning years ago, its 2 halves reaching toward the sky like beseeching arms. The sight triggered another unwelcome memory. I was 7, sitting on a fallen log, shivering despite the summer heat. My teeth chattered from fear, not cold. In the distance, partly hidden behind a massive pine, my father watched through binoculars. Hours later, when he finally came to collect me, his first words were, "Tough kids don't cry. I could see you from where I was. You cried for 30 minutes. I wiped my nose on my sleeve. I thought you left me." "I was always watching," he said, as if that should have been a comfort. "I would have stepped in if there was real danger." But how was I supposed to know what constituted real danger in his mind? The memory faded as Joel stopped suddenly, crouching down to examine something on the ground. "Look," he said, pointing his flashlight at a small, shiny wrapper. A granola bar, the same kind that had been in Theo's backpack. And nearby, a small boot print in a patch of mud. He was here. I breathed, hope surging. And recently. We followed the signs. Another boot print, a broken twig at child height, disturbed pine needles. The trail led toward a steep incline, and my heart raced with fear. What if he'd fallen? Joel moved ahead, scanning the ground carefully. "Delaney," he called, "come look at this." He was pointing to a stick planted upright in the ground. It had markings carved into it, 3 horizontal lines. "What is it?" I asked, confused. "It's a signal," Joel said, his voice tinged with admiration. "Someone taught him to leave marks."
Not someone.
My father. Who else would have prepared Theo with primitive tracking methods? It was exactly the kind of thing Walter would consider essential knowledge. "So he's marking his trail," I said. "But which way did he go?" Joel studied the stick more closely. "See how it's tilting slightly? I think he's pointing the direction." We continued in the direction the stick indicated, finding 2 more similar markers along the way. Theo was leaving a trail deliberately. My sweet, gentle boy was using the very survival skills my father had tried to force on me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Back at the base camp, I could see flashlights moving through the trees as other search teams combed their assigned areas. Zane approached as Joel and I returned briefly to report our findings. "I should be out there too," Zane insisted. "He's my son." I turned on him, fury bubbling up again. "You don't get to play dad now. Not after what you did." "I made a mistake, Delaney. A horrible mistake. But I love him too." "Then stay here and be useful. Answer the phones. Make coffee. Just stay out of my way." I turned away from his hurt expression. I couldn't deal with his feelings right now. Not when Theo was still out there. A second ranger arrived with a dog team, but after sniffing Theo's sock, the dogs seemed confused, circling and whining rather than picking up a clear trail. "The rain from yesterday might be masking his scent," the handler explained apologetically. Night had fully fallen now, and with it came a drop in temperature. The thought of Theo spending the night in the forest, alone and frightened, was unbearable. I refused to leave the trail, even when the search coordinator suggested we pause until morning. I'm not stopping, I said firmly. Not while he's out there. Joel nodded in agreement. We've got a solid lead with those markers. I'm staying out too. He built a small fire for warmth as we took a brief rest. The flames cast dancing shadows on the trees around us, and I found myself scanning them constantly, hoping to see a small figure emerging from the darkness. Tell me about him, Joel said quietly. About Theo. I smiled despite everything. He's gentle, thoughtful. He apologizes if he steps on an ant. He saves half his dessert every night because he says he likes it better the next day, but I know he's really just making it last longer. I swallowed hard. He's nothing like me. He doesn't know how to be afraid yet. And now? Joel asked softly. Now he's learning, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. We continued our search, following the scattered markers Theo had left. Near a small clearing, something caught the beam of my flashlight. A piece of paper pinned to a tree with a small stick. It was a child's drawing. A smiling sun in one corner, and below it, a sad-faced boy standing alone among trees. My heart cracked at the simple, devastating image. He stopped long enough to draw this, Joel said. That's good. It means he wasn't panicking. I nodded, unable to speak as I carefully removed the drawing and tucked it into my pocket. Your parents, Joel said after a while. They did this to others? Besides you and your brother? They ran a survival camp for a few years, I said. For troubled youth. It was shut down eventually, too many complaints. But by then, the damage was done. And your brother? You mentioned him earlier. I hesitated. I rarely spoke about Tom. The wound was still too raw, even after all these years. He ran away when he was 12, after a particularly bad training exercise. My parents never reported him missing. I stared into the darkness ahead. They said if he was strong enough, he'd come back on his own. If not, I shrugged, the rest of the sentence unnecessary. Did he come back?
No.
I got a postcard from him on my 18th birthday. He was in Seattle. Said he was okay. That was it. I kicked at a pine cone in my path. I tried to find him later, but the address was a dead end. He didn't want to be found. We walked in silence for a while, the weight of old pain hanging between us. Your parents, Joel finally said. They think they're doing the right thing, don't they? I nodded. They think this is love. They think pain is strength. I took a deep breath. But I know better now. And I'm not letting them do to Theo what they did to me and Tom. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, an animal called out a lonesome, haunting sound. He's out there, I whispered, more to myself than to Joel. And I'm going to find him. The turtle rocks loomed ahead, dark shadows against the night sky. If my father had followed his own twisted logic, this is where he would have left Theo, at the furthest point, the most challenging location.
Theo.
I called, my voice echoing through the trees. Theo, it's Mom. I'm here, baby. Only silence answered. He might be asleep, Joel suggested. Or he might have moved on from here. I refused to consider the other possibilities, that he was hurt, or lost, or worse. Theo was smart. He was leaving markers. He was trying to find his way back. We need to think like him, I said. Where would a 6-year-old go if he was scared and alone? Joel considered this. Somewhere that feels safe. Maybe a spot that reminds him of home. I scanned the area, trying to see it through Theo's eyes. The turtle rocks were imposing, not comforting. But nearby was a small hollow beneath a fallen tree, the kind of natural fort that might appeal to a child. We approached cautiously, not wanting to frighten him if he was there. I knelt down and shined my light into the hollow. Empty.
Theo.
I called again, fighting back tears of frustration. The night stretched on, each hour dragging by with excruciating slowness. We found more markers, sticks with lines carved into them, pointing the way, but no more signs of Theo himself. The temperature continued to drop, and worry gnawed at me like a physical pain. He's smart, I told Joel, needing to say it out loud. And he's still out there. I know he is. Joel nodded. We'll find him, Delaney. We won't stop looking. As dawn began to break, casting a pale, ghostly light through the trees, I clung to that promise like a lifeline. Somewhere in these woods, my son was waiting to be found, and I would not rest until he was safely in my arms again. The morning brought gray skies and a light drizzle. Water dripped from pine needles, creating a gentle percussion around us. Under different circumstances, it might have been peaceful. Now it was just another obstacle. Rain's going to make tracking harder, Joel said, zipping up his jacket, and increases the risk of hypothermia. The words sent ice through my veins. Theo only had a light sweater when Zane had dropped him off at his place yesterday morning. Did my parents give him anything warmer? Or was that not part of their test? We regrouped at the base camp, where the search coordinator, a square-jawed woman named Brenda, was organizing the day's efforts. Given the weather conditions and the overnight temperatures, we need to consider suspending ground operations until the weather clears, she announced. No, I said, stepping forward. Absolutely not. Brenda looked at me with a mix of sympathy and firmness. Ms. Morgan, I understand your concern, but my team's safety. If I can survive these woods, so can he, I insisted. But not if we stop looking now. Joel placed a hand on my shoulder. Delaney's right. The boy is leaving markers. He's mobile and thinking clearly. We can't abandon the search. After some debate, Brenda agreed to continue with a scaled-back operation, just those volunteers who felt comfortable navigating the increasingly slippery terrain. As we prepared to head out again, I caught sight of my parents. They'd been moved from the police car to a tent, where they sat drinking coffee, still maddeningly calm. My father noticed me watching and raised his cup in a mock toast. I turned away, rage burning in my chest. Theo was fighting for his life out there, and they were treating it like some twisted rite of passage. I want to try a different approach, I told Joel as we headed back into the forest. There's something I remembered from when I was a kid, a trail marker my father taught me. What kind of marker? A deer skull nailed to a tree. It's morbid, I know. But he was obsessed with Native American tracking methods, or at least his warped understanding of them. The skull marked a hidden trail that led to a hunting cabin. Joel's eyes widened. I know that marker. I've seen it before, years ago. Most hikers assume it's just some weird trophy left by hunters. We altered our course, heading deeper into the forest, following a path that existed more in my memory than in any visible trail. The rain intensified, soaking through my jacket. My jeans clung to my legs, heavy and cold. If I was this uncomfortable, how was Theo feeling? After an hour of hiking, we found it, a bleached deer skull, weathered by years of exposure, nailed to an ancient oak. It was smaller than I remembered, the antlers broken off, but unmistakable. This way, I said, pointing to a barely visible path leading off to the right. The trail wound through increasingly dense forest, barely wide enough for a single person. Low branches whipped at our faces, and the ground became treacherously slick with mud and wet leaves. Wait, Joel said suddenly, grabbing my arm. Look there. About 20 yards ahead, amid a small clearing, was a structure, a crude shelter built of branches leaning against a fallen log, covered with pine boughs. It was small, just big enough for a child to crawl into. My heart leapt. Theo? Theo, are you in there? We approached carefully. The shelter was empty, but clearly man-made, or rather, child-made. Inside was a depression in the pine needles where someone small had been sitting or lying. He built this, I whispered, touching the branches. He must have seen it on one of those wilderness shows he loves to watch. Joel examined the construction with obvious approval. It's well made. Keeps the rain out, provides some insulation. Your son's resourceful. Something white caught my eye, a piece of paper tucked into a crevice in the log. I pulled it out carefully. It was a page torn from a storybook, folded like a note. In Theo's wobbly handwriting, 3 simple words. Mommy, find me. I pressed the paper to my chest, tears mingling with the raindrops on my face. He knew I'd come for him. Joel squeezed my shoulder gently, then stepped away to radio the base. "We've found evidence of the boy, a shelter and a note. He's definitely mobile and thinking clearly." While Joel spoke with base camp, I examined the area around the shelter. There were more boot prints, leading away toward the north. And another carved stick marker, this one with 4 lines. He's counting, I realized. Each marker has one more line than the last. He's leaving a numbered trail. Joel nodded. "Smart kid. And it gives us a direction to follow." We tracked the trail of markers through the increasingly heavy rain. The 5th stick led us to a stream, swollen with rainwater, rushing over rocks with frightening force. "He wouldn't have tried to cross this," I said, scanning the banks. "Not with the water this high." "Maybe he followed it downstream," Joel suggested, looking for a narrower crossing point. We followed the stream, calling Theo's name over the roar of the water. The rain was falling in sheets now, making visibility poor. I was soaked through, shivering despite my exertion, but I pushed forward. Every minute counted. The stream led to a small waterfall, about 6 feet high, tumbling into a pool surrounded by moss-covered rocks. And there, crouched on a boulder near the edge of the pool, was a small figure in a blue sweater. I broke into a sprint, nearly slipping on the wet ground in my haste.
Ta!
The figure turned. Theo's face, pale, streaked with dirt, eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. "Mom?" His voice was so small, I could barely hear it over the water. I reached him in seconds, wrapping him in my arms, lifting him off the boulder. He was soaking wet and shaking violently, his skin cold to the touch. I stripped off my jacket and wrapped it around him, holding him close to share my body heat. "I found you," I whispered into his matted hair. "I found you, baby." Theo's arms tightened around my neck. I stayed where Grandpa said, he murmured against my shoulder. But I got hungry. Joel approached slowly, giving us space for our reunion. "Hey there, buddy."
I'm Joel.
"Your mom and I have been looking all over for you." Theo regarded him warily, then looked back at me for reassurance. "It's okay," I told him. "Joel's here to help us get home." Joel radioed the base again, his voice tight with emotion. "We've found him. The boy is alive. Repeat, we have found Theo Morgan. He's cold and wet but conscious and alert." I checked Theo for injuries, a few scratches on his arms, a bruise on his knee, but nothing serious. The backpack my father had prepared for him was gone. "What happened to your backpack?" I asked. "I dropped it," Theo said. "When I was running from the bear." My heart skipped. "A bear?" "I thought it was a bear," Theo amended. "But Grandpa said it was probably just a deer. He said I shouldn't have run." Joel and I exchanged glances. "Your grandpa was with you?" Joel asked carefully.
Theo not dead.
For a little while. He showed me how to make the stick markers and said to walk toward the sun. But then he left. His lower lip trembled. He said I had to do the rest by myself, or it didn't count. Rage boiled inside me, but I forced it down. This wasn't the time. "Well, you don't have to do anything by yourself anymore," I promised him. "I'm here now, and I'm not leaving you." We began the trek back, Joel leading the way while I carried Theo, who was too exhausted to walk. The rain continued to fall, but it seemed less threatening now, just a backdrop to our journey home. "Is it okay if I failed the test?" Theo asked suddenly, his voice small against my ear. I stopped walking, shifting him in my arms so I could see his face. "You didn't fail anything," I said firmly. "They did. They failed you and they failed me, and they're never going to get the chance to do it again." Theo considered this, his brow furrowed. "But Grandpa said strong people have to learn to survive." "Being strong isn't about surviving alone in the woods," I told him. "It's about being brave enough to ask for help when you need it. It's about caring for others. And you're already the strongest person I know." He rested his head on my shoulder, seemingly satisfied with this answer. As we continued walking, I felt a shift inside me, something hard and fearful giving way to determined resolve. I had survived my parents' twisted version of love, and now so had Theo. But unlike me, he wouldn't have to carry that burden alone. Look, Joel said, pointing ahead. Through the trees, we could see flashing lights. The base camp. Safety. Theo lifted his head. Can we go home after this? I don't like the woods anymore. I held him tighter. Yes, baby. We're going home. The base camp erupted into activity as we emerged from the trees. Paramedics rushed forward with a thermal blanket, wrapping it around Theo as I reluctantly let him out of my arms and onto a stretcher. Mom, panic flashed in his eyes as they began to wheel him toward an ambulance. I'm right here, I assured him, gripping his hand. I'm not going anywhere. The paramedics quickly assessed him. His temperature was low, but not dangerously so, his pulse strong. He was dehydrated and exhausted, with minor scrapes and bruises, but otherwise physically intact. The emotional damage, I knew, would take longer to evaluate. We need to get him to the hospital for a full workup, the lead paramedic told me. But he's going to be fine. You got to him in time. I climbed into the ambulance beside him, refusing to let go of his hand. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of the scene outside, Joel speaking with the police, Zane pacing anxiously by his car, and my parents being escorted to a police cruiser, my father's face finally showing a crack in his stoic facade. At the hospital, Theo was admitted for observation. They gave him fluids through and four, cleaned and bandaged his cuts, and wrapped him in warming blankets. A kind-eyed doctor examined him thoroughly, asking gentle questions about what had happened. My grandpa said it was a special adventure, Theo explained, his voice small but steady. He showed me how to make arrows with sticks so Mom could find me. Then he said he'd come back later, but he didn't. The doctor glanced at me, her expression carefully neutral. And how long were you alone, Theo? I don't know. A long time. It got dark, and then it was morning, and then it rained. Nearly 24 hours. My 6-year-old son had been alone in the woods for nearly 24 hours. The reality of it hit me like a physical blow. After the doctor left, a police officer came to take my statement. He was young but serious, taking detailed notes as I explained my estrangement from my parents, their survivalist beliefs, and the unauthorized lesson they had subjected Theo to. We'll need the boy's statement too, when he's feeling better, the officer said. And we'd like you to come to the station to file a formal complaint. I want to press charges, I said firmly. Child endangerment, kidnapping, whatever you can make stick. And I want a restraining order. The officer nodded. Based on what we've heard so far, there's definitely grounds for charges. Your ex-husband has already given his statement, admitting he allowed your parents to take the child without your knowledge or consent. I glanced at Theo, who had finally fallen asleep, his face peaceful for the first time since I'd found him. Will he have to testify? In court. We'll try to make it as easy on him as possible, the officer promised. Child services will be involved to ensure his well-being throughout the process. After the officer left, Zane appeared in the doorway, his face haggard with worry and guilt. How is he asked softly, not quite meeting my eyes. Physically? He'll be okay. Emotionally?
I don't know yet.
I ran a hand through my still damp hair. What were you thinking, Zane? He sank into a chair across from me. They seemed so normal. Said they wanted to make amends, be part of his life. I thought I was doing the right thing, giving him a chance to know his grandparents. I told you what they were like. I told you why I cut them off. I know. I should have listened. He looked at Theo's sleeping form, his eyes wet. I'll never forgive myself for this. I was too exhausted for anger now. It's not about your forgiveness, Zane. It's about Theo's safety. And I can't trust you with that anymore. He nodded, accepting this. What can I do? To make this right? You can tell the truth in court. About everything. And then you can respect whatever boundaries I set for Theo's well-being. Later that afternoon, Joel stopped by with a stuffed bear for Theo. Thought he might like a friendlier version of the forest, he explained with a small smile. Theo woke up as Joel was leaving. Is that for me? He asked, eyeing the bear. Sure is, buddy, Joel said, handing it over. You were pretty brave out there. Theo hugged the bear close. I was scared, he admitted. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, Joel told him. It means you keep going even when you are. After Joel left, Theo looked up at me with serious eyes. Mom, is Grandpa going to jail? I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. The police are talking to Grandpa and Grandma right now. What they did was wrong and dangerous, and there are consequences for that. Will I have to see them again? No, baby. Not if you don't want to. He seemed relieved. Good. I don't like their games. My phone rang, an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is it true? A male voice asked without preamble. Is it really happening again? The voice was deeper, rougher than I remembered, but I knew it instantly. Tom. A long pause. Yeah, it's me. I've seen the news. A boy lost in Blackwater Forest. Survivalist grandparents. Had to be them. My throat tightened. My brother, who I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. It's my son, Tom. Their grandson. They took him without permission and left him out there.
Jesus Christ.
He exhaled sharply. Is he okay? He will be. We found him this morning.
We.
Me and a park ranger named Joel.
He knew about them.
About what they used to do. Another long pause. I've been following their activities online for years, making sure they weren't hurting more kids. When I saw the news, I had to call. How did you find me? You're not that hard to track down, Lainey. A hint of the old Tom in the use of my childhood nickname. I just never thought. I never wanted to drag you back into all that. I glanced at Theo, who was examining his new bear with sleepy interest. I understand, but I'm glad you called now. I'll testify, Tom said abruptly.
If you need me to.
About what they did to us. To strengthen the case. Tears pricked at my eyes. That would help a lot. And Lainey, I believe you now. I didn't before when we were kids and you said we should report them. I thought it was just how parents were supposed to be. I was wrong. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. My brother, reaching out after all these years. One small good thing coming from this nightmare. That evening, I learned that both my parents had been formally charged. My mother had broken down during questioning, admitting that she knew what they were doing was wrong. I didn't know it was wrong, she'd reportedly said. That's what we were taught. That's what my father did to me. My father, in contrast, remained defiant. When told he was being charged with child endangerment, he'd simply shrugged and said, "You people are weak. You don't deserve him." The next day, Theo was released from the hospital. As we were preparing to leave, Joel appeared again, this time with news. I gave my statement to the police, he said, about what I knew of your parents' activities over the years. And he hesitated. About my own experience with them. I looked at him confused. I was 9, he said quietly. Part of a youth group they took out for a weekend. They separated us, left us in different parts of the forest. Said it was character building. He shook his head. It's why I became a ranger, actually. Never wanted another kid to go through that. I reached out and squeezed his hand. Thank you. For telling them. For helping find Theo. Just doing my job, he said, but his smile was warm. As we left the hospital, I held Theo's hand tightly in mine. The legal battles were just beginning. There would be hearings, testimony, hard questions. But for now, all that mattered was that he was safe. Will I ever have to go back there? Theo asked as we drove away from the hospital. I met his eyes in the rearview mirror. Never. 6 weeks after the incident at Blackwater Lake, Theo sat cross-legged on a colorful rug, building a complex Lego structure while a woman named Dr. Patterson watched with interest. That's an impressive castle, she commented. Is there anyone living inside? Theo considered this, then carefully placed a small Lego figure on the highest tower. Just the lookout, he said. He watches for danger. Dr. Patterson nodded. That's a good idea. Everyone needs someone looking out for them. I watched from a chair in the corner, as I did during all of Theo's weekly therapy sessions. Dr. Patterson had come highly recommended as an experienced trauma counselor for children. So far, Theo seemed comfortable with her, more so than with the police child psychologist who had interviewed him for the case. How are the nightmares? Dr. Patterson asked him.
Theo's tốt.
Better. I only had 2 this week. That's progress, she said with an encouraging smile. Remember those breathing exercises we practiced? Are they helping? Sometimes. Mom helps too. She sleeps in my room when it's really bad. Dr. Patterson glanced at me. That's good. It's important to feel safe. After Theo's session, Dr. Patterson spoke with me privately while Theo waited in the playroom with a supervision aide. He's processing the experience remarkably well, she said. Children are resilient, especially when they have strong support systems. But there will be long-term effects. I couldn't help asking. She nodded. Almost certainly. But they don't have to be debilitating. With continued therapy and your consistent support, Theo can integrate this experience into his life story without letting it define him. I thought about my own decades of struggling with the legacy of my parents' training, the hypervigilance, the trust issues, the recurring nightmares. I'd never had therapy as a child. Never had anyone validate that what happened to me was wrong. I've been thinking about joining a support group, I told her, for adult survivors of childhood emotional abuse. I think that would be very beneficial, Dr. Patterson said warmly. Healing is a family process. As you work through your own trauma, you'll be better equipped to help Theo with his. That evening, as I was making dinner in our new apartment, smaller than our old place, but in a quieter neighborhood with better security, there was a knock at the door. I checked the peephole before opening it, a habit I'd become even more rigid about since the incident. It was Joel, holding a small wrapped package. Hey, he said with a slightly awkward smile. I was in town for a training session and thought I'd stop by. Is that okay? Of course. I stepped aside to let him in. In the weeks since the rescue, Joel had checked in regularly, first with official updates about the case, then more personal calls just to see how we were doing. Theo came running from his room when he heard Joel's voice. Did you bring me another bear? He asked hopefully. Joel laughed. Not this time, buddy. But I did make you something. He handed over the package. Theo tore off the paper to reveal a small wooden compass, intricately carved and polished to a warm glow. Wow, Theo breathed, turning it over in his hands. It's special, Joel told him, crouching to his level. See, most compasses point north. But this one, he tapped the needle which was indeed pointing away from north. This one always points to your mom. So you'll never lose your way home again. Theo's face lit up. Really? Well, it's got a little magnet inside that's drawn to a matching one I gave your mom last week, Joel admitted with a wink in my direction. But the idea's the same. I felt a warmth bloom in my chest. Joel had become an unexpected ally in our recovery, his steady presence a reminder that not all adults were untrustworthy. After dinner, when Theo was in bed, Joel and I sat on the small balcony of the new apartment, looking out at the city lights. The preliminary hearing is next week, I said, breaking the comfortable silence. My parents' lawyer is pushing for a plea deal. Joel nodded. Will you accept it? If it includes no contact with Theo, ever, and some kind of mandatory counseling for them, maybe. I sighed. Part of me wants them to serve serious time. But another part just wants this over, so we can move forward. Whatever you decide, I'm here to help, Joel said simply. 2 days later, I received a job offer from a company in Portland, a smaller city with no woods in sight, just urban parks and well-maintained trails. A fresh start, away from the memories and the upcoming trial. I accepted immediately. The move happened quickly. Zane didn't fight the relocation, nor my petition for full custody. The experience at Blackwater Lake had shaken him deeply, stripped away his casual confidence in his own judgment. I'll visit whenever you'll allow it, he said as we signed the final custody papers. On your terms. I just want to be part of his life, however I can. I nodded, unable to fully forgive him yet, but unwilling to cut him out completely. Theo still loved his father, despite everything. Our new home was a second-floor apartment in a secure building with a small balcony where I planted herbs and flowers in colorful pots. Theo's room had a big window that looked out on a busy street. No dark forests, no isolation. Just people and cars, and the comforting hum of city life. He still had nightmares sometimes, still startled at unexpected noises. But he also laughed more, played more freely. His new school had an excellent counselor who worked with Dr. Patterson to ensure continuity in his care. A month after our move, a documentary producer emailed me, asking to feature our story in a series about survival and trauma. She promised sensitivity, creative control, a platform to raise awareness about child abuse. I declined. "I'm not ready to share," I wrote back. "We're still healing." Instead, I began writing in a journal each night after Theo was asleep, not for publication, just for myself. A record of our journey, our healing, our new life. And sometimes, when the words wouldn't come, I wrote letters I never sent, to my parents, to Tom, to my younger self. One evening I wrote, "Dear Walter and Nadine, I used to think you were preparing me for a dangerous world. Now I know you were the danger, all along. The world isn't as harsh as you claimed. There are people who help, who care, who show up when you need them. I found them. And Theo will grow up knowing that kind of strength, the kind that comes from connection, not isolation. I'm ending the cycle. It stops with me." I never mailed it. They wouldn't understand anyway. As summer turned to fall, Joel visited when his work brought him to our area. He taught Theo to identify safe plants in the city park, showed him how to use a real compass. Slowly, carefully, we were reclaiming the natural world on our own terms. "Will you come camping with us someday?" Joel asked Theo during one visit. "When you're ready. There are some beautiful, safe spots where the stars fill the whole sky." Theo considered this seriously. "Maybe. If Mom comes too." "Always," I promised him. One night, as I tucked Theo into bed, he showed me his latest drawing. A picture of our new apartment building, with bright yellow windows and smiling stick figures on the balcony. "That's us," he explained, pointing. "You, and me, and sometimes Joel. And look," he pointed to the sky above the building. "No trees. Just stars." "It's beautiful," I told him, my throat tight with emotion. "Do you like it here?" He nodded solemnly. "It's not scary," he said simply. Later, standing on our small balcony, I looked out at the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars. In the distance there were hills, and beyond them, forests, but they couldn't reach us here. We were building something new, something safe. The woods didn't scare me anymore. Because Theo wasn't out there. He was home, where he belonged. And so was I. What would you sacrifice to break a cycle of generational trauma, and how far would you go to protect your child from the demons of your own past? If this story of a mother's fierce love resonated with you, please hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments for more powerful tales of survival and healing.